Well, what should we talk about today? Is there anything going on in the world that stands out that you haven't heard me speak out on yet? A dull day in the news, isn't it? Nothing going on in the world. This is going to be a struggle for me, folks. Let's talk about Iran, huh? How about we do that? Look, you can make a number of arguments, and many people are against the war in Iran. And I want to go through those arguments today. And obviously, I will tell you where I land in terms of my perspective on all of this. But let's just get into some of the arguments against first and see if they hold up. Just seeing if I have some technical difficulties here. One of the arguments, right, which is never come true, and it's not coming true now, is that this is going to start World War III. It's going to be another endless war. And it's true that amongst conservatives, the MAGA base, we do not want an endless war. We voted for Trump because we wanted to put an end to endless wars. So we heard this with the first strikes against Iran months and months ago when we targeted their nuclear facilities and dropped very sophisticated bombs intended to pierce beneath the surface of the earth to reach those underground bunkers. And that was heralded as a success. We were told then that if Trump did that, if the United States took that action, then we were going to start World War III. And it didn't happen. Well, we hear the same thing now. World War III. What would be required for World War III to happen anyway? I mean, it'd be a world war for one, right? But that would presuppose that effectively Iran's strongest allies, which are China and Iran and North Korea, that they would have to get involved in some capacity. And that's not happening. So, I mean, that can be debunked anyway. I mean, we post Soleimani. We took Soleimani out. Iran talked big, they barked, and there was no bite at all. They backed off for years, actually. And these current strikes decapitated their leadership. The Ayatollah is dead. And there is no massive retaliation yet. Obviously, Iran itself, those who are aligned with the theocracy and the mullahs, the clerics that run the country, the totalitarians and lunatics, you know, they're going to have action. They've been instructed to fight back. But, you know, Russia is still over there mired in Ukraine. They're pretty weak. And the upshot of what we just did in Iran is that we took away Russia's drone supplier. The Iranian regime was producing the drones that they not only were going to use to attack Israel and other Western interests, American interests in the region, but they were supplying those drones to Russia. So they just lost their drone supplier. And in this day and age, the way warfare works, you got to have drones. So that's huge. China is still economically vulnerable. They have avoided a Mideast war. And so this World War III cry that has been echoed after Soleimani, after the bunker strikes, and this most recent strike on Iran, none of that triggered a global conflict. Strength deters weakness. You know, it's the Biden era inaction that invited the October 7th and Houthi attacks. And you have to remember, this is in America's interests. Those shipping lanes are a vital economic artery. And the Houthis, who are backed, aligned with the Iranian regime, those pirates, if you will, they're the ones who continue to create chaos and problems in the Strait of Hormuz, for example. All right, so the World War III cry, you can eliminate that from your list. If your argument is this is going to create World War III, that's not happened. So what's the next primary argument we hear from people? We hear that regime change always fails. Just look at Iraq, look at Afghanistan, look at Libya. So this presupposes that every modern U.S.-led regime change ends in chaos, that it ends in insurgency, failed states, and worse, it exacerbates terrorism. Now, there is an absolute foundation for this argument because in those instances, Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, that's proven true. But, those failures share some key flaws. There was no total defeat of the enemy. These disbanded armies, they created insurgency. You had deep divisions in those countries. And we had poor reconstruction efforts. Now, you could look at, Iran does not have to be a quote unquote failed regime war. People forget about World War II, post World War II. Successes like post World War II Germany and Japan, that involved overwhelming force, massive aid, the Marshall Plan, and a lot of institutional rebuilding. We've had more recent wins too in Panama in 1989, Grenada in 1983. These were smaller scale with very quick transitions, but they were successful. And Iran has advantages. It is not Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria. It has an educated population that is pro-Western. They have broad opposition to the regime. Look at the 2022 protests. They don't have Iraq-style or level sects. And so if you have targeted support for these internal changes in Iran, not a full occupation, well, it avoids these pitfalls that we're talking about. History shows that, success of regime change comes with commitment and obviously local legitimacy. The local Iranians, they're going to have to fight for their freedom. We're not going to be able to do that for them. So it's not true that regime change always fails. It fails when certain criteria are not met. And I entertain these two, concerns. Oh, this is going to start World War III. I entertain the concern that, I don't like the idea of regime change because it's scary. We can't predict the future. What if it turns out and goes south like those examples we were just talking about? But this one I don't have an appetite for. That this is all for Israel, that U.S. is Israel's puppet, that the Zionist lobby controls policy. So this argument is, of course, that these strikes serve Israeli Jewish interests, not the U.S. interests. That we are sacrificing for a foreign power driven by AIPAC money or Zionist influence. And I want to spend a little time debunking this one. This is absolutely rooted in anti-Semitic tropes. Now, this is not to say that everyone who has a problem with the Iranian operation is anti-Semitic. That's not what I'm saying. That's ignorant. But this particular argument is rooted in anti-Semitic tropes. It ignores reality, which is that Iran is a direct threat to the U.S., and that threat predates Israel ties. The 1979 hostage crisis, embassy bombings. Iran has killed hundreds of Americans, folks, via proxies. And as a matter of fact, during the Iraq War, the improvised explosive devices, the IEDs that were blowing up our soldiers' legs and killing many of them, they were being provided by the Iranians. Iran has plotted U.S. assassinations. They have chanted death to America. These strikes absolutely protect U.S. interests. Halting nukes. And don't worry, I'll get to your argument that, oh, there's no nukes. This isn't real. This is just fake in a minute. Again, it secures shipping routes. The Houthis have repeatedly hit U.S. ships. This weakens the Russia-China alliance. This is called CRINC, the new axis of evil. CRINC standing for China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. Iran, as I said, supplies drones to Russia for the Ukraine war. So Israel is an ally sharing threats. They're not a puppet master. And if that is your argument, you have brain rot. So dismissing this as for Israel ignores Iran's anti-U.S. actions. And this is promoting conspiracies over facts. Shared values, right? Like democracy, anti-terror. This drives cooperation. So now let's get into the issue of the nukes. Let's clear up this claim that I keep seeing circulating. And I have a little bit of understanding for this argument, and that's why I'm going to spend some time addressing this one too. So the administration hyped the previous massive bomb strike as a success. Now, the weapon that was used was a GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. It's a MOP, not a Moab, an MOP. And this was a 30,000-pound bunker buster, that was designed specifically to penetrate deep underground facilities before detonating. And it's the only conventional bomb that we have, the United States of America alone, that can reach the kind of depths that were needed in that scenario. Fordow was the main facility that you kept hearing the media talk about, and that was sitting 260 feet, 300 feet, under mountain rock and reinforced concrete. So anyway, what actually happened? Well, the intelligence assessments that came out after that obviously showed serious damage. You saw the satellite images. Some of the experts say underground facilities took possibly irreparable hits to critical infrastructure. But the centrifuges themselves remain largely intact because they were too deep for even MOPs to guarantee total destruction. So, this is not a lie. This is facts. So the administration's point was not that this was a one-bomb fairy tale victory. It was that this made an impact in slowing them down, in deterring them. And we didn't go straight from that to these new attacks. We sat and we met Steve Witnick, the special ambassador to Iran, for example. They've been holding meetings with the Iranian clerics. And they've given them every opportunity to stand down. But in their arrogance and in their radical nature, they refuse to do it. They refuse to do it. And I'll play some clips in just a second. So, this is not WMDs. You are a very ignorant person to make the insane assertion that Iran had no intentions of building nuclear weapons. Oh, they just wanted power. Yeah, power plants for their people that they're killing in the streets. Their people that they're imprisoning if they show their hair. Women they are hanging by the neck because they take off their veil. Oh, yes, they're just worried about making more nuclear, facilities so they can have power generation. Now, first off, the Iranian nuke program we didn't learn about really until 2002. It was hidden until then. That's when opposition groups exposed these secret enrichment sites at Natanz in Iraq, ARAK, not IRAQ. And once it was revealed, Israel and the U.S. started sounding the alarm because Iran was building centrifuges and they were beginning enrichment. Back in the early 2000s, Netanyahu, yes, was saying Iran could be 3 to 5 years away if unchecked. That wasn't a lie from Netanyahu. It was an early warning based on what was visible at the time. And so people say, well, those timelines kept getting pushed back and back and back. But that's not because the warnings were fake. It's because of interventions. We've been trying to prevent them getting a nuclear weapon for 2 decades. In 2003, Iran temporarily suspended enrichment under international pressure. How can you suspend enrichment under international pressure if that's not what you're up to? You only need enrichment up to 2 to 3% for what they're talking about. The lie that, they just want to have, nuclear power plants. So why are they enriching it up to 60%? So then you had Stuxnet around 2010. This was believed to be a U.S. Israeli cyber attack. And this destroyed thousands of centrifuges and set the program back 1 to 2 years. In the 2010s, you had assassinations of key scientists, nuclear scientists in Iran. That disrupted their expertise. And then 2015, you had the insane JCPOA deal negotiated by Barack Hussein Obama that capped enrichment at low levels. It supposedly dismantled centrifuges, stretched the breakout time to about a year. Even as bad as that deal was, Barack Obama sending them pallets of cash, billions of dollars. They still delayed. But that did not stop Iran from pursuing a nuclear weapon. So that's why it feels like they've been saying this forever. Because every time Iran gets close, something intervenes. Diplomacy, sabotage, sanctions, assassinations of their nuclear scientists, now strikes, it pushes the clock back. And so without those interventions, Iran very likely would have had a bomb by the mid-2010s. So, you can put that to rest as well. But, Obama's, 2015 deal, the JCPOA, Iran nuclear deal, the supposed goal of that was to limit Iran's nuclear enrichment or their nuclear program in exchange for lifting sanctions. And so the U.S. unfroze $100 billion in Iranian assets. We let Iran ramp up their oil exports back to pre-sanctions levels. And that gave Iran, of course, a huge economic boost. Oil revenues were surging, and they were helping the regime survive amidst domestic unrest. And what did the Iranian regime do with that money? They poured it into terror networks like Hezbollah, Hamas, Shia militias in Iraq. And this did nothing, of course, to address the ballistic missile systems. And then Biden comes in and it's more of the same. Under Biden, of course, he was allowing the Russians to work as our intermediaries to negotiate a deal with the Iranians. So the Obama administration and then the Biden administration taken together through their sanctions relief, this JCPOA temporary limits that eventually expired, these cash infusions, us giving them hundreds of billions. This helped Iran recover economically. We strengthened Iran. This should have happened a long time ago. The reason this had to happen is not because of the Jews. It's because of administrations like the Obama administration and the Biden administration, which allowed this to persist, to get to a place where this action was finally necessary because they didn't believe in American strength. So, that's a little bit about that. I want to play a couple clips here. I've got one of Steve Witkoff, who was on Fox News last night. And he's the one who's been going to these meetings and trying to negotiate with the Iranians. And I want you to listen to him talk about how these negotiations have gone thus far.
90% material, Sean, can be brought to 90%. That's weapons grade, in roughly 1 week, maybe 10 days at the outside. The 20% can be brought to weapons grade inside of 3 to 4 weeks. And let me say this, because I forgot this small little detail. In that first meeting, both the Iranian negotiators said to us directly, with no shame, that they controlled 460 kilograms of 60%, and they're aware that that could make 11 nuclear bombs, and that was the beginning of their negotiating stance. So they were proud of it. They were proud that they had evaded all sorts of oversight protocols to get to a place where they could deliver 11 nuclear bombs.
And by the way, Trump has always been consistent on this. He's always said he will do anything that's required to prevent Iran from attaining nuclear weapons. And I could care less that some people out there hate the Jews and they're anti-Semitic. Israel is an ally. And I'm sorry that the brain rot that some people are experiencing in this country has turned them completely against a U.S. ally. I just wish that the anti-Semites throughout this country, in America, could reserve just a fraction of their hatred for Jews in Israel for China, for Russia, for Iran even. And that's what's so shocking about this, that you would side with the Iranian mullahs who shout death to America, who is a sworn enemy, who's been at war with us for decades, by the way. And that's the reality. Trump is not starting a war here. He's ending one. Because Iran has been at war with America since they became a theocracy. Now, I want to explain the broader geopolitical necessity for this and how that is going to play out to benefit America. But first, China controls 98% of the world's gallium supply, a critical material powering next-generation semiconductors. Most people have never even heard of gallium. That's exactly why it matters. Because silicon chips, the foundation of modern tech, have hit their physical limits. Even NVIDIA's CEO says Moore's law is dead. So now enter gallium nitride, or GaN. GaN chips use up to 40% less energy. They charge devices 3 times faster, and they can deliver dramatically higher performance than traditional silicon. And here's the twist. A small American company holds 250 U.S. patents on breakthrough GaN technology. Major brands like NVIDIA, Samsung, Dell, Lenovo, and LG are already partnering with them. An investing expert just released a new presentation explaining why the next 12 months could be critical and how you can learn the name of this under-the-radar company. Watch it now at ganrevolution.com. That's ganrevolution.com. So let me explain this. To the anti-Semitic, Jew-hating, this isn't MAGA doctrine, this isn't Trump doctrine crowd. The U.S. Israeli strike that just killed the Ayatollah, Supreme Leader Khamenei on February 28th, that wasn't just a tactical win against a sponsor of terrorism. It also delivered a major strategic setback for China and Russia, the two great power backers of the anti-Western CRINC, as I said, axis: China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. So this fits perfectly, actually, into President Trump's very coherent. And that's the thing. People aren't used to a coherent foreign policy. This is totally coherent. It's a doctrine of maximum pressure through interconnected, decisive actions They don't just target mere direct threats. They also target their enablers. So the Maduro operation in Venezuela, for example, on January 3rd, where we captured Nicolas Maduro, that was a clear precursor to what we're seeing now. It's showing how Trump is using these targeted interventions to starve these rogue regimes of their resources while weakening who? Not just the country of Venezuela, but their great power patrons. So I want to explain how Khamenei's elimination weakens Russia and China, how it ties into this broader political policy clarity, if you will. So Russia has repeatedly called Khamenei an outstanding statesman. They love Khamenei, right? They're partners with Iran. And it's a pillar of their comprehensive strategic partnership. And Putin, of course, condemned the attack, the murder of Khamenei in Iran. Go figure. But, this underscores the hit that Moscow is experiencing now, because the fallout to Russia is going to be severe. First off, you have a military supply chain disruption. So Iran has been a critical supplier of drones, which I've explained earlier in the show, missiles, other weapons to Russia for the Ukraine war. You're talking about thousands of these Shahed drones alone, thousands of them provided to Russia. With Khamenei gone now and Iran in chaos, those supplies are going to halt. Russia's already overstretched in Ukraine. And now losing Iran, a reliable partner, forces Moscow to lean harder on North Korea or domestic production, both of which they can't do because those sources aren't there. Those resources aren't there. And you have to remember, just like Venezuela served as the gateway into our hemisphere for our enemies, China and Russia in particular, and also Iran, well, Iran served as Russia's gateway to Middle East influence. And it helps them bypass Western sanctions, by the way, because they get oil from Iran. So, you may very well see Russia harden in Ukraine to try and compensate right now. But overall, his influence just dramatically shrunk. Moscow can't offer military support to Iran. They were depending on Iran for drones. And so you don't have World War III breaking out there either. Now let's talk about China. China, they condemned the strikes as unacceptable. A serious violation of sovereignty, China, the communist regime. You see, Beijing sees Iran as a strategic and economic partner. And so this hit is exposing those vulnerabilities. You see, the big monster is not just Venezuela or Iran. The biggest monster is China. And it is breaking the greatest threats of the 21st century right now. That's the brilliance of Donald Trump's foreign policy right now. He's looking ahead. This is part of making America great again. Making America great means weakening our enemies abroad. So Iran supplied China with massive discounted oil, over 80% of Tehran's shipped exports in 2025. That's about 13.5% of China's seaborne crude imports. Let me say that again. Iran supplied China with over 80% of Tehran's shipments in 2025 were going to China. So it's a sanction evasion route. So now Iran becomes even more dependent on China. But Beijing doesn't have any leverage anymore. Now they're going to face higher energy costs. I love some of these comments, by the way, by the Jew haters over here. Derek Bros, this is some shitty analysis. Thank you, Derek. I know that you don't know any of this information. All you know is, I hate the Jews. Jews bad. Thank you, Derek. So, Iran was also a vital anti-U.S. counterweight in the Middle East. So this is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. You've heard about this for a long time. This is a broad effort by China to undermine the United States of America, to challenge U.S. dominance. And so Beijing and Moscow are now forced to do something unfathomable before Donald Trump. They have to reconsider propping up failing theocracies. So, this is a clear and consistent foreign policy. And by the way, the MAGA base is not fracturing over this. The main people out there that are trying to drive this wedge between, Trump and his base weren't part of the MAGA base to begin with. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's irrelevant. She couldn't even finish serving her 2-year term. She dropped out and left. She ran away, tucked her tail. And now you've got the demonic duo of Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly out there doing their best. They're not disguising their obvious anti-Semitic leanings at this point. Megyn Kelly's out there saying that, the troops that have died thus far over there in Iran, that they died for a foreign country. She should tell that to World War II veterans, huh? That they died for foreign countries as well, for European countries. What a disgrace. And by the way, if you talk to a lot of American troops out there, they support this because they still have recollections of what the Iranians did with their improvised explosive devices to their friends fighting beside them over there in Iraq. And others, the Marine barracks that were bombed in Beirut in Lebanon under the Reagan administration. So I don't understand how someone could not see how this is in the best interest of the United States of America. Fundamentally, you can't allow Iran to have nukes and ballistics. We're not going to allow them to go and fire those at Israel. That is an ally. And the only argument people can mount against this is they don't like Israel, so they don't think that we should defend allies. Although it's odd that, the Democrats in particular in this case, that with their foreign policy ideals, they wanted unlimited funding for Ukraine, which is not nearly as close of an ally as Israel has been. And so all of the anti-Israel stuff is rooted in anti-Semitic tropes. All right, I want to play a couple clips for you here. First off, I want to play Tucker Carlson here, who got caught telling an outright lie. The faux journalist, Tucker Carlson, who will say whatever his employers tell him to say. Listen to this.
Last night, in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, authorities arrested Mossad agents planning on committing bombings in those countries. Now, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Why would the Israelis be committing bombings in 2 Gulf countries, which are also being attacked by Iran? Aren't they on the same side? No. Israel wants to hurt Iran and Qatar and UAE and Saudi and Bahrain and Oman and Kuwait.
Wow, that sounds pretty wild, right? Tucker Carlson is alleging that he has information that Mossad is active, trying to create false flags everywhere. You know what the problem is with that, right? Al Jazeera has come out. Qatar's FM spokesperson adds that there is no information on Mossad cells operating in the country. This comes after U.S. broadcaster Tucker Carlson claimed that Qatar and Saudi Arabia have arrested individuals linked to Mossad. So there you have Tucker Carlson saying that he has sources that are telling him that Mossad has active cells in Qatar, and yet you have Qatar now coming out and saying that Tucker Carlson is lying. It's disgraceful. Now, individuals out there saying that, the Jews, set us up and they forced us to do this. Here's Donald Trump responding to that.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did that y'all pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact.
So look, some people want to have a simplistic view of the world. They want to think that, MAGA and America first means America only, and that nothing that happens abroad in the rest of the world outside of the 50 states, 48 contiguous plus Alaska and Hawaii, that doesn't serve our interests, that we can sit here and be isolationists again. And of course, that's an insane view of the world. So obviously, what is a truth is that Israel, being right there in the Middle East and threatened by a nuclear Iran, well, they're going to have to, for their own national interests and sovereignty, take action against Iran to prevent this from happening. Because it is an immediate threat, a more immediate threat to Israel than the United States of America, just because of geographic proximity. And so the Israelis were saying, look, we're going to have to take action to prevent this. They're getting closer to a nuke. And it's not just the nukes, it's the ballistic missiles. And this is going to be a big problem for us. A lot of Jews are going to die. And Iran, of course, had sent information to their military leadership that if any attack came from Israel or anywhere else, that they were going to unleash hell on Americans. That's not Jews getting us into this. That's Iran getting us into this. And so Israel has a right to its own self-defense, obviously. They do, in fact, have a right to exist and defend themselves, just like any country. And so Trump said, look, okay, well, I get it. I get it. All right, well, let's go. It's time to go. Because we know that Iran's going to target American outposts in the Middle East, and it's going to be catastrophic for us. So let's roll. There's nothing confusing about that. That is the exact thing that you would want to happen. What were the other options on the table? Sit back and let Israel attack Iran, and we just then allow and accept the fact that a lot of Americans are going to die because Iran is going to take it out on Americans as some sort of leverage, as some sort of blackmail? No, the option was to finally take action. And the reason we're here is because of inaction in the past. And the fact that you're trying to negotiate with literal terrorists. And it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Here's Megyn Kelly, by the way. Here's what she had to say.
Look, there are massive divisions over what we've done here, and people are going to change their minds over the coming days and weeks, one way or the other. But my own feeling is no one should have to die for a foreign country. I don't think those 4 service members died for the United States. I think they died for Iran or for Israel. I think I understand how this helps Iran perfectly well. I get it. I mean, I hope. Long term, we'll see. But they seem rather jubilant. 80% of the country does not support the Ayatollah. He was a terrible, terrible man. No one's crying that he's dead. No normal person. But our government's job is not to look out for Iran or for Israel. It's to look out for us. And this feels very much, to me, like it is clearly Israel's war. Mark Levin wanted it. It's his war. Ben Shapiro, Lindsey Graham, Miriam Adelson. That's obvious. They're the ones who've been pushing us into.
So that's pretty disgusting anti-Semitic tropes there. So I'm a Christian and I'm an American and I'm part of MAGA. and I supported Trump 3 times. I'm not Jewish. And I support what he's doing, and I just laid out why it was necessary and why it benefits the United States of America. So for her to suggest that because any person that is Jewish in the United States also supports this is for the Jews, is not an argument. Come talk to me, Megan. I'm not Jewish, and I support this. Why don't you have somebody on your show, Megan, who's not a Jew, and talk to them about it? Then what will you say? So look, I mean, there are concerns now about what we do going forward. And I got into that in the beginning of the show about, why this doesn't need to be Iraq or Syria and why it's not. I believe that the fall of Iran's theocratic regime, this could echo the triumphs of post-World War II Germany and Japan rather than the tragedies of Iraq and Libya. So a couple things we need to do. I mean, first, you have to have total military defeat. Is the old regime completely dismantled, or is it still lingering somewhere in the shadows? That's the first thing that has to be addressed. Second, you've got to have massive targeted reconstruction. Now, do we invest billions and demand accountability, or let corruption reign as it did in other places like Iraq, Afghanistan? And the thing is, we don't have to spend a ton of money on Iran because they have resources. They can fund stuff themselves with their oil. Third, you've got to have local legitimacy. Local legitimacy. Are there credible internal partners, right? Fourth, international buy-in, right? And we've already seen allies join us. I mean, there are 8 nations in the Gulf there that are supporting us. And that's the thing, too, about the World War III. Well, that's funny. All these other Muslim nations want Iran gone, too. So how about that, Megan? Why do these Muslim countries also have a problem with Iran? It's not just a Israel problem. But you do have to have a sustained commitment. That's the 5th thing. If we're going to do this, we have to see it through. You can't have half measures. You can't have half measures. John Gray Walski on YouTube says, is getting divorced 3 times being a good Christian? Johnny, we are all sinners, as a matter of fact, and it is through grace alone that we are saved. Every man and woman is equal. We are born into sin. And through Jesus Christ alone can we find salvation. So the fact that somebody got divorced, the fact that somebody does something wrong, that we sin, well, we all sin, you included, Johnny, so take that stick out of your eye, brother. Take that stick out of your eye. All right. Take a drive through any major city after sunset, and you'll notice something strange. Dark windows, empty offices. Right now, 1 in 5 commercial buildings in America is sitting vacant, and nearly $1 trillion in real estate loans are coming due this year. If those buildings stay empty, the banks take the hit. And those are the same banks where your retirement savings likely sit. There's a new free report called the Ghost Tower Signal that breaks it all down. It uncovers 7 early warning signs that showed up before every major crash since 1929. All 7 are active again right now. This won't make the evening news, probably, but it could help you protect your savings from what's coming. Download it free at cloutgold.com or call 855-803-GOLD to get your copy mailed to you. So, I've seen people talk about this Iran issue. I think, what's his name? Over at the Daily Wire. I'm not talking about Matt Walsh. Michael Knowles. I think I saw some clip about him saying there's basically 3, points of view on this, and you've got to pick which lane you're going to be in. But, You know, Trump is a man of action. And unfortunately, so many people in this country have Trump derangement syndrome. They're so easily misled. Their view of the world is shaped by the fact that if Donald Trump does it, they have to be against it. And that's no way to live your life or create policy or support policy. Again, I was talking about this the last episode, but it's a marvel to me that the Democrat Party stands for the grooming of children starting in kindergarten. You know, I don't remember if I mentioned this last week or not, but I was in an elementary school on Sunday. And in the window of every single classroom in this elementary school was the transgender flag. Transgender flag for elementary school people. You can't have the 10 Commandments, which Western society and law was based upon, but you can put the transgender flag in there, and in Democrat-run states, you can groom kindergartners to learn pronouns, to deny biological reality, and then put them in the pipeline that eventually leads them to having transitions. Unbelievable. You know, until every Democrat can denounce that as evil, I really don't care about your opinion on any singular issue on the planet. Because a group of people or a political party who targets children like this is a party of evil. And y'all support that. Y'all support that. But MAGA is still going strong. It's a little surprising to me to see the unifying anti-Semitism coming from both sides. This is brewing and it's growing. And, you know, it's morally reprehensible to view blacks in such a way or whites in such a way. Racism, of course, is wrong. And yet when it comes to the Jews, it's open season. Every trope is fair game. You know, it's just a shocking thing to see. You know, hey, there's primaries going on in Texas tonight. Pay attention to those. Tuesday, James Tallarico and Crockett and the Republicans as well. We'll see if MAGA prevails there and which flavor of socialism the Democrats will decide on. Will they decide on the socialism embodied by Jasmine Crockett, who happens to be a black woman, or will they go with the fake separation of church and state Presbyterian minister James Tallarico, who quotes scripture more than any Republican I've ever seen, and he misquotes it and uses that to push the left-wing agenda. But anyway, I hope that you learn something. These issues are significant, and everyone has a responsibility to think through these things and challenge their own positions. And I've done that with the Iran stuff. I've done it. I mean, that's why I went through the different arguments. It's important to consider these arguments. And then you have to make a decision based on what's real and what's not. And emotion is no compass for coming to a sound conclusion ever. You know, the Democrat Party and the left, all of it's built on emotion, not on results. Not on results. I care about results. And the Marjorie Taylor Greene variety. And I mean, there's just so many ways to dismiss reality. You know, 3.5 million pages of the Epstein files is available right now. There are, I think, 6 million pages total, but 3.5 million pages are out there. Have you read all 3.5 million of those pages yet? While you demand the other 2.5 million? Oh, Trump's doing this in Iran to cover up for the Epstein stuff. What? These aren't real arguments. Endless conspiracy theories. Oh, and the Jews are behind everything. The Epstein list is driving everything. That's not real. Meanwhile, you've got the SAVE Act that we can't even pass in the Senate because of the coward Republican leadership, Thune, supported by McConnell and several others. That's bipartisan in the country. More than 70% of Democrats support securing our elections. And they'll rush back to Senate to grandstand about the Iran war, targeted war, short-term war. But they refuse to pass legislation that we as a country regret. This is the stuff I don't get. This is why I don't get it. Why don't people get behind this? Look what your leaders think of you. We finally have a piece of legislation, something that every American can agree upon in this polarized country where nobody can agree on anything anymore, and the Senate won't pass it. But it's just everything is about just division, division, division. You have one thing that's unifying, and they won't do it. They won't do it. It makes me sick to my stomach. But anyway, look, I love you guys. I love even the people that are very nasty on here. Some have said some very mean things or tried to be degrading, and that's okay. That's okay. I wish that we could meet, not like Joe Biden, where he wants to take Trump out back in high school and beat him up. But I would love to talk more to people. That's what I loved about Charlie Kirk. His just desire to do that and reach across and talk to people and engage. We have to do that as a civilization still. And that's why too, I talk about these comments and I bring them up. One, because I want to address them when they're, and I want to be realistic about people who are watching. I don't know why you're watching sometimes because, some of you who are just like, you just want to attack, but that's fine. I'm glad you're here, but I don't have animosity for you. I want my daughters to inherit a country that is better than the one that I'm living in. And that's my objective. And that, being a parent changes you so much. It changed me so much. And it just crystallized so many things about what I fight for and what I say and what I do and how even I conduct myself. So anyway, all right, look, guys, I still don't have my announcement yet. I've got some big news coming up, hopefully later this week. I've got a few more conversations I've got to have with some people about this. But really sincerely, I hope you know that I appreciate you so much. I look forward to getting behind this mic more than once or twice a week. That will come one of these days. But stay strong, stay alert, be skeptical, but, don't wake up a Debbie Downer every single day. There is a lot to celebrate. This country and the world is being shaped in ways that benefit us for a generation right now. And, there are a lot of forces that don't want this country to succeed. They don't want it to succeed, but I want it to succeed. And I know you do too. And even many of you who disagree with me, I think that's something that you care about too. All right, folks, God bless you all. This is Drew Allen, your millennial minister of truth. Until next time.